Hello and welcome to another edition of SportsTalk Philadelphia here on LaSalle TV. I'm your host Josh Abrams, and on today's show we are going to talk about how bad the Flyers continue to be in the playoffs. The Heat even up the series with the 76ers as Game 3 is taking place tonight. And with a special bonus segment here on the show, we will discuss the Phillies and their somewhat hot start. All that and more after this intro.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
And welcome back from the introduction. And as usual, I have a great panel with me today to discuss the not-so-hot Flyers. To my left is Kevin Cook, and Tegan Lamont and Emily Desmond join us today. Guys, let's get right into it. There's really no other way to put it. This team is just not good. They are not meant to really make any noise in the playoffs, and I've been saying that for a while. They always have the team to get to the playoffs, but not the team to make a deep run. We're down 3-1. Kevin, I'll start with you. What are your just general thoughts and everything?
You're seeing the difference in what it is to be an elite team like Pittsburgh and what it is to be a team that makes the playoffs every now and then, like the Flyers do. They haven't won a series since 2012. We're talking 6 years now, and in that amount of time, it's not that they haven't been trying to. It's just that they haven't. Like they just have not performed well, and it's a sign that it's time to move on from some of the people and the players that they have on their current roster.
Yeah, I think one thing that's always been an issue for them is the goalie play, and that's especially happening in this series. As we just saw, Pittsburgh has 16 goals through 3 games, and anytime you're giving up 4 games.
Yeah.
Sorry, but 4 goals a game. Yeah, 4 goals a game in the playoffs is something that teams shouldn't be averaging. You need some better play from Elliott or Neuwirth or whoever they have in net. It's just not good enough from those guys right now.
See, goaltending is one of those things where it's tough to come by a good goaltender. They don't just run out there on the market the teams that have good goaltenders keep them because they're that hard to come by. So to get a good goaltender, you got to develop them.
Yeah.
And so I can kind of understand why they want to why that may take time. But the other things that I think that are just blaring right now is the fact that we haven't been good with the power play in a couple of years. We haven't been good on penalty kill. I think we're 29th this year. Like, these are things that need to change.
Yeah.
And it's something that can only happen over the off season. It needs to start with coaching, and then maybe it might not be Hacksaw, but it's got to be the people around him.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I think it's very unfortunate that we had to be paired up with the Penguins. Emily, what do you think? Do you just think it's just like a sign of fate that we have to play the Penguins, who have had our number all season? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure. I just for me, the Flyers, it's not all there for the Flyers. I've been saying that for a couple weeks now. And going up against the Penguins, I think it's like the whole rivalry. So we kind of thought the Flyers would play up to that, but unfortunately, they're not.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that the rivalry was going to make us play better than what we actually were capable of. And I thought maybe if we did possibly somehow find a way to muster up a series out of this, then, we would have been saying we're sitting a lot better than what we all expected. But to be honest, I think I'm happy that that's not the case, because we know exactly what we need to do what we need to address this offseason. And that's we need to get a good player. We need a superstar on this team. They need a premier goaltender and a premier goal scorer in order to put themselves in that top tier.
Right. Yeah. Your best player for seemingly forever has been Giroux, and Giroux's not a guy that's going to go out there and light up the net every year and score and lead your team in goals and carry the team to winning championships.
He's just not with him.
Right. He's a good player to have on the team and a good star, but he's not the superstar goal scorer. Right. Every other team, Pittsburgh, Washington, all the good teams have guys that you have the main guy, you have your Ovechkin, you have your Crosby, but then there's a Malkin or a Kuznetsov or someone, Carlson, or someone to step up and score goals too.
Fits in better.
Right, absolutely. He's not a superstar. He's a star.
Yeah, so now, obviously, we were without one of our key players last night in Sean Couturier. He collided with I don't remember who it was. Was it Radko?
Yeah.
Okay, so he collided with Radko Gudas during practice, and unfortunately was not able to play last night. The overwhelming aspect of it for me is that I don't really think it would have made all that much of a difference, as we've been talking about. It has just been an absolute downpour from Pittsburgh, and while they have scored 16 goals in these 4 games so far, I think someone to really key in on is their goaltender, Matt Murray. Now, we've always remembered Marc-Andre Fleury being the guy for the Penguins in the early 2000s and whatnot, but now this kid is a brand new goalie, and he's a brand new star.
Yeah, he's been. I mean, obviously, we've scored 6 goals in the series and 5 in one game. We've scored 1 goal outside of our 1 offensive showing, and that's just not good enough. And give Murray the credit that he deserves, but we have to find something on offense too. And like you were saying, maybe Couturier makes a difference, but he doesn't make a 5-goal difference. You don't go from winning or losing 5-0 to contending in a game with just 1 guy.
Yeah, Murray comes up big when they need him, and we need someone who's going to do that for us. Obviously, you can't stop everything, but we need a goaltender who's going to make those big saves. Because you have Murray, who doesn't give up a lot of rebounds. He makes everything look super easy, and he's just taking away all the angles for the Flyers. So, I don't know, there's his stats right there. I mean, it kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah, Fleury, I think the Flyers were in Fleury's head there a little bit, and And with Murray, that is just not the case. At least it hasn't been at all this series. But another thing, I think Couturier makes a difference on April 13th. I don't know if you guys saw that. He crushes it on April 13th, especially when he's playing Pittsburgh. But in this series, he's not changing how the course is going. And I mean, if we had him last night, I still don't think that maybe we would have lost 4-1.
Yeah, I think one thing that I do want to talk about though is we were talking a couple weeks before they went into the playoffs about, is this team even good enough to make it there? So we're looking at a team that isn't the greatest and probably doesn't deserve to be where they are right now, but it's a team that we kind of knew that about. We didn't expect them to go out and challenge for a cup really this year.
Yeah, in all honesty, they limped into the playoffs.
Right. It's not a team that we had high hopes going in, and it's not like the Sixers, like we're going to talk about later, where we're like, okay, now show us something. Give us what we've been looking for. Give us what we've seen all year. Go do it in the playoffs. It's a Flyers team that struggles with the power play, struggles on the penalty kill. There's so many issues with the team that all need to be addressed before they're a legitimate contender.
Yeah, and alluding back to what you said about the Sixers team, they entered as the 3 seed and are playing the 6 seed, and it's the exact opposite for the Flyers, which is what makes it concerning having that lower seed. But I guess the real big topic that's going to come up, assuming that we can't somehow fight our way out of the series, is Dave Hackstall. He's been our coach. So he's in his 3rd year now, 2nd playoff appearance in those 3 years. However, he has not gotten out of the first round, and it looks like he's not going to get out of the first round this year. The stats are up there now. You see how he just has not been able to get the job done against the Penguins. Emily, what are your overall thoughts on Hackstall as we head into the latter stages of the series?
I just don't think he knows how to adjust the Flyers in the regular season into the postseason. I think that's one of the bigger issues. And I don't know, I just don't think the team's all there yet, so it can't exactly go after the coaching necessarily. But I think the whole team is just a reflection on how the Flyers aren't there yet, as well as the coaching.
Yeah, I'm not a big coaching change guy. I'm not someone that'll call for coaching change very often, especially not in the situation that the Flyers are in. Like we were talking about earlier, there's so many pieces that are missing. They don't have the star that you need in the NHL to compete. They don't have the goaltender that you need in the NHL to win a championship. There's too many holes to blame it on Hackstall. Granted, I think that he has some issues and he has some things that he needs to work out, but I think there's a lot of gaps that aren't his fault that need to round together until we can see what Hackstall can do as a coach.
So, no, I think that there's a difference between what the Flyers are doing and what the Sixers have done. Yeah. We knew that the Sixers were not going to contend for any type of
anything.
Getting a win for the Sixers was
a rarity.
Exactly. For the Flyers, though, it was kind of expected that we were going to be decent during the time when we were rebuilding, and that's why I think that it's time to move on from Hacksaw. If you're going to put out a team that is, half decent while you're also trying to build young talent from within, whether it was Ghost, whether it was Provorov or Haig or Konechny or whoever it may have been, that's on that coach to put the right veteran talent next to him, let them learn and mold the young player. And I just don't think that he's done that.
But see, here's another thing, though. I don't see where he has that, though. What veteran talent are we putting next to him? Putting Wayne Simmons next to guys? Like, Wayne Simmons, as good as he may be sometimes, isn't the most consistent, consummate pro. He's not the guy that you think of and say, oh, yeah, that guy, let him teach, He's a guy that does dumb things in hockey games, and he did it last night. He takes dumb penalties, and he goes on hot streaks, but then he goes on cold streaks. There's not the veteran leadership there that I think they probably need.
Well, I think that falls. There is veteran leadership on that team. I mean, they signed Dale Weiss, who to a horrible deal for 3 years.
Right.
And they've brought in a number of other players, and none of these players are technically good veterans.
Right.
But that's the veteran leadership that we have, and you got to know if you got to relate to that somehow if you're the coach.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely a very disappointing Flyers talk here. We're gonna see what happens. I don't see a lot of circumstances where they can pull out this win in Game 5, and my panelists agree with me on that one. But we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk Sixers and hopefully a brighter sports talk. Stay tuned.
LaSalle TV.
I love that new show, Flip.
I gotta keep up, so news you can use has to be my favorite.
I love LaSalle Sports, so Sportsline is my favorite TV show.
We love LaSalle TV.
I love that new show with the psychology department, Relationships 101.
I love Backstage Pass. It's my favorite show.
We love LaSalle TV.
SportsTalk Philadelphia.
Q&A, I love that show.
It's gotta be LaSalle TV News.
I love LaSalle TV.
And welcome back from the commercial break. Filling in for Emily Desmond is Trevor Gregoric, all the way at the end of the table as we talk about the Sixers. And, they're not necessarily off to the hottest start. They did lose Game 2 the other day, but it's definitely a more positive outlook on this team compared to the other team that fills in the Wells Fargo Center, the Flyers. How are you guys feeling right now as the series is now tied 1-1?
This is tough. I still think that we have the upper hand. They won 17 straight. It was time for them. It was bound to happen that they were going to lose one. And the fact that everything went the Heat's way and we were still in the game at the end, I think that we're still going to compete. And I think that the team that we saw in the 17 prior games is more the team that we're going to see remaining in the playoffs than the team that we saw in the last game.
Yeah, one thing I really liked seeing was the resiliency there. Down big and then fight back, and they got it down to 4.
4, yeah.
And then, obviously it plays out how it plays out, but
if you're Dario, you cannot let Wade steal the ball if you win that.
No,
situation.
yeah, that play was about where it ended.
I agree with you. They battled hard just to get back into the situation.
Right, and that's something that you like to see from a young team being down in the playoffs with no real experience, honestly. You see a team that actually cares about winning the game. It's not a oh yeah, we'll just go out and get game 3. No, they want to sweep. They wanted to sweep the Heat. They want to go out there and they want to contend in every ball game and win as often as they can and get to the finals. That's what their goal is.
Looking at the series, though, obviously it's disappointing to lose game 2, but you can look at it as even like a good loss. You know, like what Kevin said, just about how we were on the win streak, and a loss was bound to happen eventually. So it's good to get it out early in the series, probably a wake-up call going down to Miami. So hopefully they can bounce back. Like tonight's going to be like
pivotal.
The teller, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if they lose in Miami, it's going to be tough. But if they can come out, if they can play well, if players can step up, like players that especially maybe aren't like off the bench, or if we can just have a couple guys step up, I think we'll be in a good spot going into the rest of the series.
And that was key in game 1. And I mean, we defended the Heat extraordinarily well.
It was a tale of two halves.
Yeah. And our bench came up huge. Bellinelli and Ilyasova combined for 42 points in that game. The entire starting lineup for the Heat got 43.
Yeah.
So our bench, just 2 players off the bench,
outscored
almost
the Heat.
outscored the Heat. I mean, minus 1 point. So,
yeah,
like,
so
that's the difference in game 1 and game 2. That was the difference. The Heat defended a lot better in game 2. They defended the pick and rolls a lot better, and their perimeter defense was a ton better. And we need to figure out, we need to somehow solve Kelly Olynyk. I don't know how that's a problem for us right now, because we've got Whiteside in the back pocket, and that's without Joel Embiid.
Get myself some more Joel involved, and then we'll see what Olynyk.
Yeah,
things would change.
Yeah. One thing that I want to touch on real quick, what Trevor said, game 3s and their importance. I saw a stat today, like 74% of the time in the NBA, the team that wins game 3 is the team that goes on to win the series. So that tells you just how important that game is at the Heat tonight.
Well, it's definitely in the Heat's hand. Like, the Heat have control in the series now with 3 games remaining in Miami.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens within these next couple of days. But just to recap the first couple of games, because game 1 did happen in between the weeks, between today and last week. We won 130 to 103. You can see the stats there. It was just an overall team effort, and the Sixers shot 64 and blazing hot, 64% from 3, and only gave up, or only committed, rather, 10 turnovers. It was just a great game overall. As I said to Kevin, it was a tale of 2 halves. But when you go to game 2, it's sort of started off the same way, except the Heat took control instead of the Sixers. And going off of that, I wanted to bring up the graphic that I made for this. I came across a tweet the other day after game 2 was over. I think a lot of people were maybe panicking a little bit. A lot of people want Joel Embiid back. This is from Eitan Shander of the Sports Shop, which is closely affiliated with 97.5. There were a lot of things that contributed to the game 2 loss. The Sixers shot a dismal and absolutely terrible 19% from 3. Dwayne Wade dropped a season-high 28 points, which is very rare, a season-high 28 from Wade. The refs were essentially terrible throughout the whole game, and Joel Embiid was not on the floor. The likeliness of all of this happening again all at once, probably not going to happen, which is why I'm not concerned about the Sixers.
No, yeah, and just like I was saying earlier, that's basically the same thing. It's too much happened for the Heat that is for them to win that it's just not likely to happen again.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's without Joel Embiid. If Embiid ends up playing, I mean, we're talking a totally different team here. And I actually wonder if Miami would play better against us if we put Embiid out there, because then we'd have to slow the game down. And they clearly play better in the half court offense than they do when we get out and running.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. But I think one of the things that I noticed from game 1 to game 2 is that we play our best basketball when we distribute the points, right? So if you look back to our win streak, a lot of those games were like 6 guys in double figures. Most of them have like probably 15 or more points. That's when we play our best. And I think game 2, we couldn't really find like that distribution. People tried to step up, but it didn't always work out. So I mean, you guys are right that it probably, like Dwayne Wade making, 28 points, like probably won't happen again. But if it does, like they can't keep making excuses for themselves, you know? Like people have to step up. They have to try and find different ways to score. I do think like someone like Robert Covington, like he's gonna bounce back, definitely. But, I mean, they can't hope that Dwayne Wade doesn't go for 28 again, because if he does, then they're stuck, you know? So they got to make adjustments too.
And to your point there, Trevor, the Sixers, I mean, I don't know exactly how many assists that they had in both those games, but in Game 2 you can noticeably see that there was a lot more ISO going on. Players were trying to create their own shots, and that's not what we saw in Game 1, especially in that second half. They were moving the ball well. They were finding the open player, making an extra pass, and sinking wide open shots.
Yeah, and the obvious guy to point out in those first 2 ball games is Simmons. Even in the second game, played really well. I mean, there were stretches where he was turning the ball over a little bit in the second game, but in the first game, I think he came, a rebound short of being the 4th guy to ever have a triple-double in his first NBA game, or in his first NBA playoff game. He's really impressive to watch, and I mean, if that man develops a jump shot ever in his career, he's really going to be something super special. He's going to be a guy that teams fear for a really long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So looking at the whole spectrum of the playoffs, if we can bring up the Eastern Conference bracket here, the Sixers obviously entered as the 3rd seed, and luckily they can get home court advantage if the Bucks can somehow upset the Celtics. Now that series is, I believe, 2-0 in favor of the Celtics. You know, assuming that we can hang on to this series and beat the Heat like everyone's expecting, is either team a favorite for you guys in terms of wanting to play them in the second round?
I said last week I'd like to play the Celtics just to stick to Boston again, but it really doesn't matter. I thought that, to be honest, I really did think that Milwaukee was saving, like they held back when we played them in that last game of the year. But from what they've played so far this postseason, that doesn't seem to be the case. They just seem to be a much inferior team than Boston. And with that, I think that Boston is going to be tired by the time they get to round 2. They don't have as many players in their rotation as us, let alone they've lost a lot of players this season.
Yeah, another thing with that, I think I'd rather see Boston as well, but because they're missing
Kyrie, Marcus Smart, I think, is out, and obviously Gordon Hayward.
I think playing the Bucks, there's a guy on the floor that can take over a game and can just take over a series. There's a guy, Giannis can do what he wants when he wants, almost all the time.
Except for shoot the ball.
Right, but he can do pretty much everything.
For that, yeah.
Right. I think when you look at the Celtics, there's not a guy on that team that really scares you all over the floor. So I think the Celtics are probably the team that I'd rather play.
Yeah, I'd like to play the Celtics too. And I think, especially if Joel Embiid can come back and get acclimated pretty quickly.
That would give us a huge advantage.
I mean, no team really scares me then.
Who would cover him?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Even like going past the Celtics, like I don't want to jinx it or talk about that yet, but like even like the Cavs.
We
like,
match up well against most of the teams.
I mean, no one's really
with Joel.
Yeah, and I don't think we should be intimidated by any of these teams, honestly.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people feel that way in general. But we obviously can't get, as you said, can't get too far ahead of ourselves. We play the Heat tonight, pivotal Game 3, and as Tegan said, essentially the winner of this game will probably win the series. Real quick, your guys' predictions for tonight. What do you guys see happening?
I think you're going to see a Sixers victory tonight. I think that they're going to come back, and they're like we've all said, they're going to bounce back, and they're going to stick it to them tonight.
Yeah, I hope Joel plays tonight, and I think that the Sixers win. I think the Sixers win with or without him tonight, and I think they win the series. But hopefully he plays tonight to give him some time.
I agree. I hope Joel Embiid plays tonight. But if the Sixers can come out and just play their basketball, like it's going to be pivotal tonight. You know, if they can do it, they'll win, and I think they go on to win the series. If they lose tonight, I don't think the Heat go on to win the series. But I mean, it's going to be hard to climb back, losing 2 in a row. So.
Yeah, it's definitely it's going to be fun tonight. It's going to be a very entertaining Game 3, no matter what happens. But let's move on to Fast 5. And Trevor, I'm going to come to you first with an Eagles question. We haven't talked about them all show, but the schedule is going to be released tonight at 8, and we already know 2 of the scheduled games, and that's the home opener against Atlanta and then the London game against Jacksonville. Which game are you looking forward to the most?
I'm looking forward to that Atlanta game. I think they're hungry. They want to come out and definitely beat us after what we did to them this past season. I think it's going to be a good test early, see where we're at. So I'm excited for that game.
Tegan, we're going to come to you with another Sixers question. How confident are you, if at all, that the Sixers can close out the series without Embiid?
Like I said, there's two factors that really matter to me in this. I think a win tonight really helps them, and I think Joel coming back also really helps them, obviously. But I do think that they should win this series.
Kevin, we're going to come to you. We talked about the coaching aspect with the Flyers and Dave Hackstall, but player-wise, is trading Claude Giroux a viable option this offseason?
I don't really think so. I think he's a guy that is, he's a good hockey player for us. He's, as Tegan said earlier, he's not a star player, but he's not a superstar player, but he's a very good player. And I think that moving him might be a mistake. But I don't know what the value for Claude Giroux would be, who you could trade him for, and what you could get in return, what type of talent that would be. So I'd say that he's still going to be here, and he's still going to be the captain for us next year.
Yeah, I think all Flyers fans are hoping for that as well. Tegan, we're going to come back to you with a Phillies question. We're going to talk about it later in the bonus segment, but we are 10-7 on the season.
Yep.
Is that overachieving or underachieving for you?
Judging by the way that they have played, I would say 10-7 is underachieving. I think they've given away baseball games that they should not have given away. If you would have told me 17 games into the season that the team is 10-7, I would have told you that was a good start. I think that they need to find some security with the lineup, some stability. Find out where guys need to be in the lineup and let it coast a little bit.
Last but not least, Trevor, another Eagles question. Who do you want the Eagles to pick with that late round 32nd overall?
I'm a fan of Darius Juice at LSU. First of all, he's a great name, but besides that, I think he's a solid player. He can come in and learn under the guys we have. So yeah, it'd just be another weapon to add to the repertoire, I think.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this segment of Sports Talk Philadelphia. You can find us on social media on Twitter and YouTube, which is where you can find the bonus segment for the Phillies, which will be happening very soon. And you can also find us on Facebook and on LaSalle.edu/LaSalleTV. I thank you guys so much again for tuning in and watching, and we will see you all next week. Have a great weekend.